Hi everyone, this is Evie from My Ketofied Life. I posted a link the other day about statin drugs and why they're bad for you. And ever since then, I've had a lot of questions about cholesterol in general. Um, Actually, and even when I began keto and I started doing a lot of research and I really got into it, listened to lectures, read studies, um, and I would share my lifestyle with others, I often got questions about, well, aren't you worried about your cholesterol levels? Or one time somebody asked me, actually more than once, they said, how's your blood work? Like, what's your cholesterol looking like with all this fat that you're consuming? So I just wanted to kind of shed some light and explain a little bit about cholesterol because most people don't really understand what it is or how it works within the body. You know, I'm sure you're familiar with two terms that are often thrown around, good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. Firstly, I just want to touch upon the fact that cholesterol in and of itself is actually very good for your body. It's a natural process that occurs within your body. Your liver produces cholesterol, and it serves many wonderful functions within the body. A couple of those include regulating your hormones, so estrogen and testosterone, which I'll touch on a little bit later, and it helps with your immune system. It helps the point of it generating the point of your body generating cholesterol is to help inflammation. It fights inflammation. Cholesterol helps with vitamin absorption. A main one is vitamin D3. So our bodies need cholesterol. And the point essentially that I'm trying to get at is that cholesterol is meant to move freely and naturally throughout the bloodstream so that it can provide us with the benefits and so that it can do its job. And one of the major problems that occurs with the normal Western diet is that the amount of carbohydrates and sugar that we consume, it essentially clogs up our cells and our arteries. And because it does that, it makes the cholesterol it gives the cholesterol a harder time to move freely, and therefore it gets trapped. The cholesterol gets trapped because it cannot move the way it's supposed to. And because it gets trapped, that is what causes the problem. That is what causes clogged arteries, and, well, for the most part, and heart disease, etc. So the thing that I especially want to talk to you about is why is the cholesterol being trapped, and what's essentially causing that to happen. When we eat too much carbs and sugar, it doesn't really matter how much, like if you eat an obscene amount of sweet potato or if you eat like a chocolate bar, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, your body takes that carbohydrate, doesn't matter what source it comes from, and it converts it to glucose. And if you have too much glucose in your body and in your cells, in your bloodstream, it will attach to other proteins and other particles, and it causes inflammation. It irritates the artery walls. And the problem with that is you can think about it as taking sandpaper and just like rubbing your hand with sandpaper. It'll get inflamed and red, and when something gets inflamed, it expands, right? So that is causing that inflammation within the cell and within the artery is causing the cholesterol it's not allowing the cholesterol to move freely. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is that when there is inflammation present in the body, your liver, it signals the liver to produce cholesterol. And that cholesterol is then sent to the site of inflammation so that it can essentially put out the fire. So the thing with inflammation is what causes it. Typically, generally, aside from injuries, etc., most inflammation that we see is a result of a high carbohydrate diet. And that inflammation isn't limited to any one part of the body. And when you have inflammation, doesn't matter where in your body, your liver will, as a natural response, produce cholesterol to go target that inflammation. So you can think of it as firemen. Cholesterol, your liver will produce, there's two types of cholesterol essentially. There's the LDL, which is deemed the bad cholesterol, and there's the HDL, which is deemed the good cholesterol. So what happens is when a site of inflammation is alerted, when it's identified by the body, the liver will produce cholesterol and it'll send it to that site of inflammation. So those LDL particles, and as a side note, cholesterol is a little bit more complicated, but I'm just trying to simplify it so you just get a general grasp of of how cholesterol works within the body and why ingesting fat versus having a low-fat, high-carb diet is bad. So when there's inflammation, the liver will generate that cholesterol and they'll send it to the site of the inflammation. And those particles, so the LDL cholesterol, they put out the fire. So essentially they take their hose and they spray the cholesterol so that the inflammation goes down. Now, LDL cholesterol is the other particle, and what that does is then it comes in and it removes that cholesterol that was sprayed on the inflammation by those LDL firemen, and it brings them back to the liver to be excreted. So the problem comes when your body is full of inflammation, your liver is continuously producing cholesterol. And if you have too much LDL cholesterol in your body, there's not enough HDL, the good cholesterol, that can come in and remove it all. It's just overworked. There's too much going on for your liver to handle. So what ends up happening is that you have a lot of LDL cholesterol sitting there because there's not enough HDL to come and remove it. This is one of the major problems. So when you go for your blood work and it tells you that you have high LDL cholesterol, well, chances are this is occurring in your body. Now, there are a few other things that might cause that, and don't forget things like stress, and physical fatigue, etc. That also can contribute to cholesterol, but for the purposes of this video and the purposes of keto and understanding how nutrition fits in with cholesterol, that is kind of the general idea of how it works. Now, just as a side note, when you ingest fat, it doesn't go through the same digestive process as the other macros do, so as protein and carbohydrates. Fat is digested with digestive enzymes that are secreted from 90% of the enzymes are secreted through the pancreas, and that helps bring the fat into the lymph system, not directly into the bloodstream. What happens often is that when you have a diet that's really high in carbs and sugar and you have this excess glucose in your liver will use what it needs for energy, and then it stores fat, but then there's still this excess and it doesn't know what to do with it. So what will happen is that it converts it into fat, and that's what's sent into your bloodstream, which would contribute to your cholesterol levels, clogged arteries, etc. Obviously, it can be a little bit more complicated, but that's a really, in my opinion, good synopsis and summary of what exactly cholesterol does, how it works within our bodies, and how it fits into nutrition. So, I hope that kind of helps clear up and explain things in terms of why cholesterol in itself isn't a harmful thing. The second thing that I quickly want to touch on in regards to my post about statin drugs. So what do statin drugs do? They artificially lower your cholesterol, and they don't remove that cholesterol. They don't act as the HDL to take away the cholesterol that's already sitting in your arteries. It signals to your liver to stop producing cholesterol. So two major problems with this I find for women who are premenopausal or going through menopause, and actually, let's deal with women first. So as I said before, cholesterol regulates hormones. Well, what happens when a woman is premenopausal and is going through or is about to go through menopause? A lot of women experience signs of well, hot flashes, their hormones are all over the place, they're emotional, they just want to lose their minds. And a lot of time people don't realize that if you're on statin drugs, that's going to make it a whole lot worse, because cholesterol regulates hormones and it produces estrogen. So when a woman is in that time frame of when it's time for a woman to go through menopause, when they're premenopausal, the liver will produce cholesterol so that the excess estrogen can be produced, so that it helps with the menopausal process. Now for men, it's similar in that cholesterol produces testosterone, and well, it helps regulate it. So a lot of the time, a statin drug, because it artificially it lowers cholesterol by telling the liver to stop producing cholesterol, what happens? Testosterone is not regulated, it's not produced properly. So a lot of men will experience erectile dysfunction as one of them. And what happens? You go on that little blue pill. So there's a few other things, but I'm gonna try and keep this video a little shorter, but I hope that this helps. Feel free to comment or message me with any questions. I'm happy to help. It's a very interesting process, and it's even more interesting to know how, or it's more alarming rather, to know how severely uneducated we are as a society about basic human functions, and how easily we grasp onto the promise of, taking a pill that'll help cure all your problems. Well, none of that will happen unless you get to the source. I hope this helps. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and as always, keto on.